Mark Twain, the writer. Mark Twain's achievement, in spite of his fabulous personality, rests upon his books. One day, people will no longer remember the man in the white suit with the big mustache and the shock of white hair, but people will still read Tom Sawyer, The Adventure of Huckleberry Finn, The Prince and the Pauper, A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court, and Life on the Mississippi. Huck and Tom live as no other two boys in all of fiction. Tom is the eternal boy bound and wound up in adventure. Tom is a dreamer on the banks of the Mississippi, seeing all the excitement of the world in its waters, feeling that the great waterway is the road to freedom. The river brings all the kinds of people and experiences to Tom Sawyer, sleepy little town of St. Petersburg, inverted comma, in reality Hannibal, full stop. It permits a boy to escape the monotony of his life and find adventure and excitement on its shore and islands. On the Mississippi, Tom Sawyer gets a Mark Twain said of himself, secrets not to be got out of the books, but only acquirable by experience. Huck's river is different from Tom's. Huck's Mississippi is a river of a boy growing up and understanding new things, seeing the world in a new way, just as the life around Huck was growing up and coming of age. So does Huck himself come of age in the book. Tom sees only the good in the river, but Huckleberry Finn accepts good and evil as living side by side. He knows both the dreamy, romantic quality of the river and also the horror and superstitions and violence that are part of it. Tom and Huck themselves are representative of two kinds of life, of two kinds of attitude. Tom is the young boy, the schemer, the pranksters, the romantic. Tom has a home and love. He uses the river as a means to fulfill all the dreams of adventure that the average young boy has. But Huck is realist. He does not look at the world through rose-colored glasses as Tom does. He has had hard life. His mother is dead. His father is the town drunkard. He must shift for himself. He has learned that life is not easy. Tom is protected. Huck is not. Therefore, Huck must find a code all his own. He must go further into life than Tom. He must judge things for himself. He cannot use what people have told him because very few people bother to tell him anything, while Tom is sure he is always right because he knows what people should do. Huck is full of doubts. He knows what people tell him he ought to do, but he can never be sure people are right. His own eyes often show him that people say one thing and do another. He has to find out what is right for himself. Huck then becomes the true free boy in search of real meaning in his life. He listens to his own heart. He makes up his own mind. He does not carry the common prejudices of the people with him. Huck's real development comes in relation to Niger Jim. He respects Jim and loves him because he sees Jim's fine nature, just as on the quartz farm, Mark Twain had loved and admired Uncle Daniel. Of course, the reader wants Huck to help Jim. The reader sees that Huck is right. His idea of respect for a man, regardless of the color of his skin, is more advanced than the things he has been taught. In this way, Mark Twain expressed his feelings about slavery more forcefully than all the preaching in the world could do. The law of slavery was wrong. Jim runs away to escape those laws. So does Huck. They take to the river in the search for their freedom, and the river teaches them each something new. On the Mississippi, a man is a man regardless of the color of his skin. This lesson is further spelled out in Mark Twain's book, Puddin' Wilson. Why were niggers and whites made? What crime did the uncreated first nigger commit? That the curse of birth was decreed for him? And why is this awful difference made between white and black? Mark Twain makes one of his characters ask. In the society of the time, there was no way to escape the terrible penalty of being born black. But on the river, the free river, that crime no longer existed. The Mississippi, a whole mile broad, as Huck says, and awful still and grand, is the real hero of Huckleberry Finn. The river knows no law save itself. It is the river of Mark Twain as he knew it best, a testing place for man. He was to write of it often. His fullest picture occurs in Life on the Mississippi, where he describes in detail the days he spent as a cub under Horace Bixby and his life as a river pilot. But Life on the Mississippi is much more than this. It is a rounded picture of all shades of life along the Mississippi. There are the sleepy little villages like Hannibal, where he grew up. There is the floating world of the steamboat. There are the frontier failures, the squatters who live in meanness and poverty. For the frontier could punish a man cruelly rob him of his courage and defeat his dreams, as well as it could reward another man with fabulous riches. Men like Mark Twain's father came to know the bitterness of poverty and the disillusionment of their dreams. They turned inward, quiet, defeated men who, as Thoreau had said earlier, lived lives of quiet desperation. Still, men like Mark's father held on to their honor, but the poor whites living along the river were bitter. They had come west to find a new life, and they had found only the old one, poverty and ignorance, injustice and violence. But Mark Twain loved them all. He saw their failings and he understood their ways. He wrote of them as he saw them, and he filled Life on the Mississippi with all their portraits. He had a special admiration for the courageous, self-reliant, strong, brash bargemen. To him, they symbolized the strength even the lowest of the men had, but he did not sentimentalize them. He saw also their coarseness and brutality, but they produced heroes, men of enormous strength and unheard of courage. He liked to listen to their tall stories and jot down their dialect. They grounded him in the savage humor of the West. It was Nevada, of course, that was the real West, and Mark Twain was meant to write a book about that too. Roughing It tells his experiences in the mining camps. This book tells the stories of the overland coachmen, the Pony Express riders, the men who went prospecting. It tells of a land that made giants and broke the weak, and of the colorful times that will never come again. Virginia City, with its towering mountain above it, seemed a symbol of the height to which the lowest man could ascend. In America, a man need not remain poor and powerless. With hard work and determination, he might be able to carve out fabulous success for himself. Yet, as Mark Twain matured, he also realized that material wealth alone was not enough. There had to be a spiritual growth as well. His later books point to this. The Prince and the Pauper, a Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's court, Joan of Arc, The Gilded Age. In Nevada, Mark Twain was at crossroads of his life. He had come to the point of giving up the dream of easy riches. He now knew that he would spend the rest of his life writing. His problem was to equip himself to write in the best way possible. He did not want to write fancy literary pieces. He wanted the air of the West in his books. He wanted the talk of Westerners to come from the mouths of his characters. Joey Goodman, who ran the Virginia City newspaper, gave him some of the best advice of his life. Mark Twain had not been with the paper long when Goodman said, "Never say we learned so and so, or it is rumored, or we understand so and so, but go to headquarters and get the absolute facts. Then speak out and say it is so and so. In the one case, you are likely to be shot, and in the other case, you are pretty sure to be, but you will preserve the public confidence." That kind of honesty marked the writing of Mark Twain all his life. He never thought so and so or took someone else's word for so and so. He went out and saw for himself and said it is so and so. Very nice. Very, very, very nice. A good man had predicted that honesty was often to get him in trouble, but he did win the public's confidence. After he had been writing only a short time for the Territorial Enterprise, the Virginia City legislature feared his pen. It could ridicule a man and make him the laughing stock of the town. Mark Twain became the most adept political writer in the territory. Mark himself said, "I was a newspaper reporter 4 years in cities and so saw the inside of many things, and was reporter in a legislature 2 sessions and the same in Congress 1 session, and thus learned to know personally 3 sample bodies of the smallest minds and the selfiest souls and the cowardliest hearts that God makes. It was strong language. He always called a spade a spade. He said exactly what he thought. While he was in Nevada, he said exactly what he thought. In Europe, his books, Innocents Abroad, is full of his forthright, honest opinions. For that reason, it is much more than just a travel book. It is a record of a man seeing a new kind of world and making up his mind what is valuable and what is not. To make up his mind, Mark Twain had often to call in question many things that he had taken for granted. In searching his own conscience, he makes others search theirs. At one period during his life, he and Charles Dudley Warner wrote a book together which criticized the corruption of the life of that time. The book was called The Gilded Age, and much of the writing which Mark Twain contributed to it was the result of his observations as a newspaperman, lecturer, traveler, and student of human nature. The book is an uneven one. This is natural since two men took turns writing it, but it still has the imprint of Mark Twain. In The Gilded Age, Mark Twain used members of his own family as models. Washington Hawkins was something of a portrait of himself. Lafayette was Orion. Colonel Sellers, one of his most famous character creations, was a portrait of a cousin, James Lambton. There is an echo in The Gilded Age of the old Clement's failing of looking for riches in impossible places. The book is also criticism of the newly rich who do not reserve their luck, and of the men who dream of mad schemes of making money without knowing how to carry them out. Certainly, Mark Twain must have been remembering his own father when Squire Hawkins dies, murmuring, "Never lose sight of the Tennessee land, wealth that is boundless." And there is a little doubt that he thought of Orion when he had Washington Hawkins, old and shattered at 30. Curse that land. Washington says of the land that it has cursed every hour of my life. We might all have been prosperous now. We might all have been happy all these heartbreaking years if we had gone contentedly to work and built up our own wealth by our own toil and sweat. Instead of that, we have suffered more than the damned themselves suffer. As Mark Twain grew older, he saw that human error was inevitable, but he also came to feel that it might serve as means of refining the spirit. Through pain and suffering would come learning. Through learning, refinement of the soul. In A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court, Mark Twain contrasted his own times with the year 528. The hero of the book is the boss, a mechanic who is hit on the head and wakes up in 6th century. He comes to the court of King Arthur and is horrified by all the ignorance and abuses he sees. He is particularly opposed to Merlin the magician because he feels that Merlin is superstitious humbug who is hoodwinking the people. The boss is certain that all he has to do is apply the know-how of the late 19th century to the evils of King Arthur's court, and he will abolish all abuses. The boss is, in a way, is Tom Sawyer grown up, but he is also Huck. He has show-offness of Tom, combined with the shrewdness and ingenuity of Huck. He is boundlessly optimistic, sure that a machine can solve any problem. He is brash and bountiful and endlessly running about trying to patch up problems, but he is limited. The boss does not recognize that technical advancement will not alone remake man. There has to be spiritual change as well. Man must mature within as well as without. The boss never stops trying to undo what he thinks is wrong, but he can only undo wrong with a new machine. He is blinded by his own limitations. In the end, it is the superstitious Merlin who triumphs. Mark Twain is here proclaiming his idea that one man alone, even with all the machines in the world, cannot make society better. A dictator may be able to improve material conditions, but he lessens the spiritual values of all around him. In The Prince and the Pauper, two boys exchange clothes and thereby exchange lives. The prince becomes the pauper and the pauper the prince. Both learn heartbreaking lessons. The real king is horrified by the life of the poor. The pauper is bewildered and upset by the way of the rich. Mark Twain was trying to show in this book that absolute monarchy can paralyze the feelings of both big and little men. Such a system does not let men think for themselves. It does not let them judge men on their own merits. At the end, with the real king restored to his throne, there is some hope that he will improve conditions once he understands democracy. The skeptical Yankee Mark Twain had used a fictional pair of boys to show his own hatred of pretension, bogus values, rank, and nobility. He was once again looking at the world with the clear eyes that had memorized the shape of the Mississippi. He was seeing the world with the Westner's sense of humor. He was writing with all the sharp sarcasms of the new world's insistence that a man is only what he proves himself to be by his own deeds. Sammy's long talk was not meant just to amuse his friends and audiences. It went into his books as well. To teach was one thing, but it was not enough. Mark Twain knew that to teach one must also entertain. He always made his readers laugh. Many said this was all he did, but they were not reading closely. Humor, wrote Mark Twain in his autobiography, is only a fragrance, a decoration. Often it is merely an odd trick of speech and spelling. And presently the fashion passes and the fame along with it. There are those who say a novel should be a work of art solely, and you must not preach in it, you must not teach in it. That may be true as regards novels, but it is not true as regards humor. Humor must not professedly teach and it must not professedly preach, but it must do both if it would live forever. Well, he did both, and there is little doubt that his books will live so long as there is one young boy or girl left in the world who wants to go down the Mississippi or to the court of King Arthur and do laugh with Mark Twain as he gets himself a genuine Mexican plug. The boy becomes a man and the girl a woman, and they both still go back to Sam Clemens' books because he has made a world within in them that captures our hearts, enriches our minds, and expands our horizons.